Actually sad that he was unable to see out his term, but I will move that we accept the resignation of Councillor Ian Knockwood.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Green. Any discussion?
Question.
The question's been called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. I would just add, I did speak personally to Councillor Knockwood this morning, and I did proffer thanks to him for his work and efforts the last 2 years, and wished him nothing but the best going forward. So following this, I think we would need a motion to authorize staff. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Perry.
Further to that, I will move that council authorize staff to proceed with planning a special election for District 4, Shubenacadie, and bring a report back to Executive Committee in May.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by the Deputy Warden. Is there any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion has passed unanimously. The next item is counselor respect training. Shirley, I'll let you take that.
Councillors, you may recall, as part of the 2021-2024 strategic plan, there are some training opportunities included in that for not only staff, but for members of council. And HR has done some research on some respect in the workplace training as one of those pieces. They have found a session, it's a 3-hour session, including breaks. It can either be in-person or virtual. It will be customized to East Hants, so it's not just a generic training. And so we're asking council to consider possible dates, and if you would prefer that to be held in person or virtual. They have indicated that they would be available on either the committee or council extension dates for May and June, if that's something that you wanted to consider. If you're not comfortable using those dates, we would ask that you pick another date, and we can bring the calendar up if you'd like to take a look at dates.
Okay, council, what are your wishes? Don't all speak at once. Deputy Warden Mitchell, followed by Councillor Green.
Through you to staff, I'm comfortable with either the extension dates or May or June at their discretion.
Councillor Green.
Yes, I'll agree with the deputy warden. I'm good with any of the extension dates. Just book one in and I'll be there.
Okay. Is there, Councillor Perry?
I also agree with the dates. I would just probably say we should probably double check with the date in June, that it doesn't conflict with any of the school graduations or proms at that time.
It's our understanding at this point that the graduations are all going to be held virtually again this year. The Dr. Snow bursary checks have been sent, and the schools are not looking for representatives from any of the presenters this year. So hopefully they'll get back to in person next year, but at this point it doesn't sound like there's going to be anything in person.
Is there a preference between in-person and virtual? Councillor Hibb.
Thank you, Warden. I would prefer a personal meeting rather than do it online. It's that you get to ask more questions and you get better informed by having a personal meeting rather than a virtual meeting. That's my preference.
Councillor Rhino.
I follow Councillor Hibb.
Councillor Eisner.
Same. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess we would be looking at an in-person meeting. Any of the extension dates, being cognizant if anything changes of the dates in June. So someone prepared to move a motion to have staff schedule this training for one of the extension dates in May or June, and that this be done in person. Counselor Green.
I will move that we have the training on one of the extension nights in May or June, and that the meeting will be held here in council chambers in person.
We have a seconder. Seconded by the deputy warden. You ready for the question?
Question.
Still waiting for two folks to vote. And the motion has passed unanimously.
And it appears the live stream is now working.
And it appears the live stream is now working, so apologies to the public. We were undergoing technical difficulties and not knowing how quickly those could be addressed. We did start our meeting on time. The entire meeting will be available. It is entirely recorded, and the first part will be available on our YouTube station after the meeting. So moving along to the next item under correspondence for decision. Just waiting for the screen to catch up. I will turn that over to you as well, Cheryl Lee, I believe, a staff memo and recommendation around the old train station in Elmsdale.
Okay, that's great. I'm actually going to pass it over to Adam.
Sorry, Adam.
He knows the details on this one.
Didn't notice your mic on.
Good evening, Madam Warden. So the parcel of land, which is 0.4 of an acre in Elmsdale that is owned by CN, where the former train station building is, the Earthkeepers currently have a lease, and council's recently renewed, or is going to renew their lease. We have a lease for the land with CN, and as part of renewing the Earthkeepers lease, we want to ensure that the lease for the land is secured as well. And so that is a 5-year renewal period. Really, the terms and conditions are the same as the previous two leases. However, there are two slight changes in what's being brought forward. One of them is the cost. The cost is increased from CN from $550 annually to $800 annually. They do pay the taxes, which are just under $400 for that parcel of land. And the second change is we noticed in the previous agreements that the termination clause was only 30 days, so we've actually increased it to the municipal benefit of 90 days, and that would align with the Earthkeepers termination as well. So this renewal is really a requirement on the Municipal Government Act. It's not something we need approval from council to move forward for based on the previous terms and conditions, and as noted, there's additional ones today. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Councillor Green.
I would move the recommended motion.
Seconded by Councillor Musa. Is there any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion has passed unanimously. The next item is a request for a letter of support from Bill McLean, President of Community Wind Farms, Inc., for the Melvin Lake Wind Project. And Shirley?
Councilors, you may recall that Mr. McLean was in and did a presentation at Executive Committee last month regarding the wind farm project that they are proposing. As part of that process through the province for the RFP, they are seeking a letter of support. So he is hoping that council would be supportive of a letter that they can include in their submission.
Someone prepared to move? This is standard, a standard request that we've done for other groups with wind projects in the area. Councillor Perry,
I'm prepared to move that we send a letter of support for the Melvin Lake Wind Project.
do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hebb. Any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion has passed unanimously. The next item is a flag request to council from the Affirm team at Riverview United Church.
So council, we have received this request from the Affirm team seeking that council fly the pride flag for the month of June. And the current flag policy does not allow us to fly any flags other than the federal, provincial, or municipal flag. So any other flag requests must come to council for consideration. There is some work going to be happening this year as part of that flag policy, and you probably will see a report coming in the upcoming months about that. But this request must be dealt with directly by council.
Thank you, Shirley. And I would note there's also a letter of support from Cody Boyce along with this request. Councillor Green.
I would move that the Progress Pride flag be flown as requested in the letter.
Seconded by Councillor Tingley. Councillor Perry.
I'm supportive of the motion. I just have a question through to staff. This request to be flown for the entire month, is there any other significant days within the month of June, I believe it's month of June, that requests could come in from groups for a similar item such as this? I would hate to have it be chalked off and other groups and organizations and things not have the opportunity for the entire month.
There is a list of observances that council has seen in the past. The month of June, there are a couple of other dates. Indigenous Awareness Month or Day is in the month of June as well. Those days are actually planned in our social media campaigns, so there will be some social media around some of those things. We would have to deal with a flag request if it came in, and council could make a decision at that time.
Okay, I just want to make it, I don't want the public to understand that we're not going to accept anybody else's request for the month of June because we're letting them fly the flag for the month of June already. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hebb.
Thank you, Warden. I have no objection to the motion that's been presented. I remember this conversation we had a few years back when the policy was made, and it was quite a lengthy discussion, and at the end of it, it was my interpretation that we either let everybody that comes in with a request to fly the flags, or we don't let anybody fly the flags, because if you let one person go, you can't single them out. As we shouldn't be picking and choosing, that's all. As Shirley has mentioned, that there's something coming forward, and I would prefer to wait to that. I know it's not going to help this group now, but I would prefer to wait that to see what that brings, rather than just to say we allow this and we allow that. So I will be in support of the motion, but I think that's something we really have to think about before we vote. So thank you.
Thank you. I would note this is not the first exception we've made to the policy. We did fly the Every Child Matters flag. Yes, we did. Yeah. And so any further discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously. The next item is the appointment of the building official and fire inspector, our newest employee, I believe, Henry Black. You see before you, I'm in order for Mr. Black. Do you want to take this, Shirley?
The MGA requires that council actually make appointments for building officials and fire inspectors under the MGA. So we do need motions directly from council to make those appointments.
Councillor Green.
I would move that council appoint Henry Black as building official for the municipality of East Hants per section 5(2) of the Building Code Act.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Perry. Any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion has passed unanimously. Councillor Green?
Move that council appoint Henry Black as municipal fire inspector for section 19(1)B of the Fire Safety Act.
Second.
Seconded by the deputy warden. Is there any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously. The next item, you have before you copies of correspondence from Chester and Guysborough opposing the new proposed provincial non-resident property tax and deed transfer tax, Bill 149, as well as correspondence from a resident, Brian Canavan. I might ask if the deputy warden would perhaps take the chair and I would address this briefly.
I'll accept the chair. Go ahead, Warden.
Yes, if I'm a little off this evening, it's because I came directly from a Zoom meeting with the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities for mayors, wardens, and CAOs to discuss this very subject. And at that meeting, I think there was pretty well unanimous support for the position that the province very much disrespected municipalities with a lack of consultation before bringing this in. There's discussion that property taxation is basically municipalities' only source of revenue, main source of revenue, and we work very hard every year to try and keep an affordable tax rate for our residents and provide the services that we do. So to have the provincial government suddenly come in with a tax that in many cases more than doubles what we charge for services and just take that money into general revenue is somewhat unpalatable. And overall, the feeling that the way this was done is not good, that the policy itself is perhaps flawed, and that municipalities feel somewhat left out of the conversation on this. So I did express in the meeting that I was coming into a council meeting and could not speak for my council, but that personally I agreed with what others were saying, and I felt that probably the majority of my council would feel the same way. You just have to look at the letter from Mr. Canavan, a former resident of East Hants who is now living in Europe, comes back every summer, intended to build a home here this year, actually, and to spend his summer vacations and to have it built in preparation for his retirement in the next 10 years or so. But the implementation of this tax will mean that home is now not going to be built. So the municipality has now lost out on the tax revenue of a home that was going to be built and now isn't. That's simply one local example. There were numerous examples given on the meeting tonight. One Ontario company with Nova Scotia roots who had an architect planning an expansion into Nova Scotia that would have provided 100 jobs, canceled on point of principle. So I think the impact on municipalities is going to be somewhat far-reaching, and I don't think that these vacation-type homes that we're talking about are going to do anything for affordable housing in Nova Scotia. So I guess what I am asking is for a motion somewhat to write a letter similar to what Chester and Guysborough have written to our MLA and to the provincial government, expressing our concerns about lack of consultation and perhaps lack of understanding as to what this will mean to municipalities. And also a formal notice, I guess, of support to NSFM in their efforts to correspond with the province about this issue.
I'll make that motion.
I'll give you back the chair, Warden.
Okay, I have Councillor Perry on to speak. Did you wish to speak as well, Councillor Tingley? Councillor Perry, you were on first, and then I'll go to Councillor Tingley.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I'm kind of indifferent with an SFM on this. The other two provinces in our area, PEI and New Brunswick, have very similar taxation, very similar things going on in their provinces. This could just bring us a little more in line with them. I do agree that municipalities should have been consulted on this, so that I will agree on. Just in my conversations with some people in the public and some of the stories that have been hitting the news, I really question the validity of some of these stories based on the interest groups that are pushing to have this bill repealed. I think there should be consultation so we understand it a little bit better. But I don't, I'm not in support of removing this. I believe we need to have consultation about it and refine it. Thank you.
Counselor Tingley.
Yeah, before this letter come, and when I first heard about this bill, I was kind of thinking the same thing. Just in my small circle, I know a lot of people that would like to, or I shouldn't say a lot, but a good number of people that will want to build a place and move back here eventually. And I don't think this bill is going to have a big effect on improving the affordable housing situation. I haven't heard anything that would convince me of that. So I don't think they should have gone ahead with it without consulting the municipalities for the same reasons you talked about. Therefore, I would move that you write a letter as you suggested.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Counselor Green. Counselor Rhino, you were on before the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Warden. I have had 2 or 3 letters or emails with regard to this issue. Quite frankly, any taxation issue that piggybacks us is, without consultation, is very unfair in my mind. But I'll be quite honest, I've heard bits and pieces about this, and I have not read up on it. And as you say, you have been privy to a meeting tonight and have heard views on it. Would not it be pertinent to have a report on this at the next executive committee of both the pros and the cons, so we have a full information on which to weigh in on the subject?
If I might, that would be wonderful if we could do that. The government has already passed this legislation through third reading. And the only influence that we will probably have now is on how they implement it and possible exceptions and how it will look. I would say that the taxation, it is my understanding in other provinces, is somewhat different than this, in that it was done together as a shared model with municipalities receiving some of the non-resident tax benefits of the similar type. That's my understanding from the meeting tonight, that it's entirely different.
I
It would be great-
understand it's the done deal. I understand that
Yeah,
pretty much.
if we wait a month and have a report and discuss this, we're going to miss the boat. And that's unfortunate that the time allotted doesn't allow for that, but that's kind of the way it is.
Well, I could give the support with regard to no correspondence with the municipalities. I can support that. That's a given. I just don't, I feel really uncomfortable in not hearing the whole issue with regard to not supporting the issue itself and taking that away. So whether this motion passes or whatever, could we still have some kind of brief report at the executive committee to how this is going to work? So
Yeah.
maybe the rest of council doesn't want it, but anyway.
No, I think that would be an excellent report to have, because no one knows the answers to most of the questions now. No one knows, for example, here's a question that arose not at tonight's meeting, but at a previous meeting. What happens when a property goes up for tax sale for non-payment of taxes? Will municipalities still have the ability to sell that property at tax sale and give a title to recoup their money? If money's also owed to the province, and no one knows the answer to that. And I think the main points that were made was, as you said, the non-consultation piece, and the part that property taxation has always been the municipal pot of money, so to speak, where we get our revenues from to provide property services. And ever since I've been on council, the idea following service exchange, just before you and I came on council, was that property taxes pay for property services, municipalities do, and income taxes and provincial taxes pay for people things. And this certainly goes against that. But I've been reminded by the deputy warden that we have a public hearing scheduled for 7:30. So I think we will pause this discussion and hold this motion in abeyance and come back to it following the public hearing.
Do you need a motion to table?
I
Until
don't
we come
think we
back?
need a motion to table. We're just going to pause the discussion and come back after the public hearing. So returning to our decision, we do have a public hearing on the schedule for Bona Investments Limited, a zone change from established residential neighborhood zone R1 to two-dwelling unit residential R2. So, councillors, this evening we have one item on the public hearing agenda. The purpose of this hearing is for council to hear input from the public prior to making a decision on the proposal. To the members of the public who have chosen to participate this evening, welcome. Please note that council's procedural policy requires that you not cheer, boo, clap, or otherwise disrupt this meeting. Anyone who wants to comment or ask questions will be provided an opportunity to do so. Tonight, council may approve, reject, or defer its decision on the proposal to a later date. Council approval is required for the proposals to proceed. I will now ask the Assistant Municipal Clerk to outline when the public hearing advertisements were published.
Madam Warden, a public hearing notice appeared in the April 13th and April 20th editions of the Chronicle Herald. The notices described the proposal, gave the date and time of the public hearing, and indicated that staff reports were available to the public.
Councillors, the public hearing this evening is for a proposal to rezone two properties to two-dwelling unit residential R2 zone. I would now ask the Chair of the Planning Advisory Committee to present his report.
Thank you, Warden. Planning Advisory Committee has considered the proposal on behalf of Municipal Council. The committee has reviewed staff's reports, completed their evaluation, and will make a recommendation to Council during this hearing. Madam Warden, through you, I would now ask staff to present their final report on the proposal.
Right. Thank you, Madam Warden. So these two properties are on White Road, and as mentioned, they're currently zoned R1, and the applicant is seeking to have them rezoned to R2. Two dwelling units are not permitted in the R1 zone, so that's the reason for the request. And this is just an air photo of the two subject properties. The property in the middle, actually, I think a number of people know that there was a property there, a house burned and has been rebuilt, so the air photo's not quite up to date. So the surrounding properties, there's a mixture of zones in the surrounding area. There is some R2 zoning on White Road further down on the left. There's a mixed-use center zone along Highway 2, and back on Catherine and White Road is R1. And in terms of policy, Policy RD 23 of the MPS requires that council consider all the criteria given to determine whether lots can be rezoned from R1 to R2. And staff, looking at that criteria, found that although the 2 lots in question meet several of those criteria of RD23, they don't meet all of the criteria. The 2 lots do not meet Part B of the policy, which helps create contiguous areas of compatible residential or mixed-use character. The proposed rezoning would not result in the creation of contiguous residential character that is compatible with White Road. So if rezoned, the 2 lots will be the only 2 lots permitting 2-unit dwelling construction along that row of single-unit properties. Additionally, these 2 lots are not located adjacent to each other and will have an existing R1 lot in the middle of them, creating, I guess, a checkerboard or leapfrog pattern. And policy IM 18G discourages creating what we call a leapfrog development pattern. So if we step back a little bit further and look, I guess, in context of those 2 lots, as you can see, all of White Road is zoned R1 except for that R2 block closer to Highway 2. So that's, I guess, when staff talk about a contiguous zone, that's what we're talking about. And staff do acknowledge there are 2 zone lots on the opposite side of White Road a little bit further down, and in addition, obviously, in behind as well. But staff believe that this type of leapfrog or checkerboard zoning is not desirable and should not be encouraged. Hence, we are recommending refusal of the application. And there was a detailed table of the criteria I mentioned in the staff report with comments from staff on each of those. In terms of any technical issues, when we did our review, there weren't any. Our infrastructure and operations department indicated that, the incremental impact on water and wastewater would be negligible. Same thing with traffic as determined by Department of Public Works. So this is just a chart to show where we're at in the process. We're at the public hearing, obviously. And a public information meeting was not required just because it is a rezoning and not an NPS amendment as well. We mailed questionnaires to all property owners within 300 meters of the application site. And a letter confirming details of the public hearing also was mailed to those same property owners. So the questionnaires that we sent out, we sent 138 out and we got 9 back. And just some of the comments there that some residents felt it would look odd, that it wouldn't match the surrounding architecture. And staff commented that this rezoning does not match the R1 zone properties located adjacent to the 2 lots along White Road. Except again, if you go down a little bit further on closer to Highway 2. Development will increase traffic. Again, the impact was found to be negligible. There was a comment that the lots are too small for 2 dwelling units, but both lots would meet the minimum requirement in the land use bylaw. And then there's also a comment about parking concerns. And again, the development would have to meet the requirements of the land use bylaw. So to conclude, staff are recommending the application be refused. Planning staff believe that the rezoning from R1 to R2 is not consistent with the single unit residential character of at least this portion of White Road and does not create a contiguous area of compatible residential character. Any decision by council, of course, because it is a rezoning, would be appealable to the NSUARB. Thank you, Madam Warden.
Thank you. Does any member of council have questions for staff? Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to staff, if the decision of council is appealed, do you have any parameter what the cost might be to the municipality?
No, Madam Warden. I mean, the appeals we've seen in recent years are in the tens of thousands, but I don't know the exact number it would be for something like this.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Head.
Thank you, Warden. Through you to staff, if we look at the map of the sites that are there, closer to Highway 2, there is another R1 property there. And then there's another little narrow strip down closer to Highway 2. I'm assuming the one closer to number 2, that wouldn't be big enough to put a residential home of an R1 on, would it?
Probably not,
Not.
yeah, just eyeballing it, I don't think so.
But the other piece, there would be big enough for a residential?
Yeah, it would certainly meet the, I think you're talking about the one that actually has the R1 on it right here?
Yes, that one. there
Yeah,
is.
it certainly has enough frontage and area. You know, the shape of the house might be a little bit tricky with the front and rear yard setbacks, but it would meet those lot standards.
And it probably wouldn't be big enough to put a duplex on.
Haven't looked at it for that, but obviously it gets trickier as you
Yeah, well, that's
try to
what
put
I'm
more on,
saying,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Similar to Councillor Hab, this R1 is belong to the property behind or separate one?
Sorry,
That small narrow R1, is it the same property as the other one or is that by itself? This one, yeah.
Is it the
one
same
behind-
property?
The one behind it, the R2 and behind.
this one here?
Yeah, are those the same property or different?
No, it's a separate property, so the property line follows that line
Oh,
there.
okay, so, yeah, so I thought it's the same owner, so he could build them back same as the R2, right?
I don't believe it's the same owner. I haven't checked recently. I don't think it's the same owner.
Okay. I had another question. Oh, that's okay, thank you.
Any other council have questions for staff? I would now ask if the applicant has any comments or would like to make a presentation. And I'm not seeing a representative of the applicant present. So I will now open the floor for comments and questions from the public. However, I'm not seeing anyone in the public present, so I will move on. Does any member of staff have any final comments?
No, Madam Warden.
I would now ask the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee to present his committee's recommendation.
Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council refuse the application by Bona Investments Limited to rezone property located at PID 452901778 and PID 4538677 on White Road from established residential neighborhood R1 zone to two dwelling unit residential R2 zone. As chair of PAC, I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Garden Cole has seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Hebb?
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to staff. According to your report and what I've got of it, maybe I missed something. The only reason we're refusing this is because it's a leapfrog zoning area. Other than that, everything else meets the criteria?
Through you, Madam Warden, yes, it's, there was a number of criteria in that policy, and the lots would meet the standard. You know, there were no concerns about capacity, there were no concerns about traffic from the reviewing agency, so it's really about this pattern of development. Like really, if you're gonna rezone, you shouldn't do it lot by lot, like we should look at a larger areas, I guess the way we would typically treat an area like this. So if we were gonna rezone those two lots to R2, we should really rezone that whole stretch of Highway 1, not pick two lots.
The lot that's in the middle is already R1, so we really couldn't change that one, could we?
Well, you could change the zone, through Madam Warden, you could change the zone, but then, and a single unit dwelling is permitted in the R2 zone, so it would
Yeah.
be, yeah, I suspect the resident may not want their zone changed.
Not true. I was down and I looked at these properties, and as you're coming in White Estates, you've seen the properties on the left that is already R2. And then we have an R1, but then we have the R2, which is a subject property. The R1, there's a brand new house, a big beautiful house there, and then we have another R2. And if this situation was up farther in the subdivision, I would understand it, but as you come in off the road, I personally can't see having duplexes put in those two properties, even it's gonna make any difference in the aesthetics of it. Once they're already built, people aren't even gonna notice that. So, I don't really see any problems with that, and plus it's appealable too, so, that kind of concerns me too. If it passes everything other than just being a leapfrog thing, I think it might be an appeal that we may lose, my own personal
I would
opinion.
caution you, counsel, we're not discussing whether or not we feel appeals would be successful or unsuccessful in case we find ourselves in a case.
I don't think I said that, I just said it's appealable, so. Anyway, that's my comments, thank you.
Counselor Tingley. Trying.
Yep. Well, in light of your comments about discussing appeals, I probably shouldn't say anything. So I'm just going to refrain from what I was going to say.
Counselor Rhino.
Yes, I can remember the upset of some residents when the ones on Catherine Street were rezoned there. I had one come to me, and that lady that worked with in government, and she was very upset that they had bought their house there and as an R1, and it had changed. So I do remember that. I do kind of feel, I know we can't, we're not privy to who writes what and with the questionnaires, but if I was plunked in the middle of that and just built my new house, I bought that property assuming each one on each side was R1, and then all of a sudden, I had a bad run, a lot of our house burnt, built it all back up, and bang, now the possibility of changing to an R2. So I feel for that one, and also, they say there's no impact on traffic, with moving it to R2, but I beg to differ. I've been around here for a long time, and the amount of traffic and the complaints about traffic on White Road coming out there onto the number 2, it has been very significant here for years. And when we have discussions, that's one of the first things that comes up is, how we get out on the number 2. There's so much traffic there at that place now. So I know there are only 2 lots, but if they were to go to R2, then the possibility of there's 2 more vehicles 2 more cars going to be on that. So whether it's minimal 2 cars, yes, it's minimal, but it's still adding to the traffic congestion at that. And that's what I've heard for years at that intersection. So I'll be supporting the motion to have it remain as R1.
Thank you. Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. John, when those application comes in, do you discuss it with the like before the person who apply for zone change? Do you discuss it with them before they pay the money? This way they know that it's against our policy or something beforehand or not?
Quite often we do. I didn't handle this application at the front end, so I don't know what back and forth happened.
But usually you do. Usually you do. Like this way they know they're like a gambling. It's against our policy. So if you want to pay the money and go for it.
And I mean, sometimes through you, Madam Warden, sometimes at the front end, we haven't really looked at our policies deeply when somebody's proposing to do something. But quite often we do have those discussions where something is clearly,
I think this one is clear when you see the leapfrog and stuff that you're talking about. I think we should have tell the guy that applying that it's against our policy because so and so, and if you want to take your chance, go for it. If not, thank you.
Any further discussion? Any questions been called? And just for clarity, folks, because we've ended up in confusion in the past, if you vote yes for this, you are voting in favor of staff's recommendation to deny this zoning change. And the votes are in, and the motion has passed 7-3. So that concludes tonight's public hearing. I would thank everyone for attending. I have received information, folks, before we go back to our regular business, that there is an issue with one of the cameras not working. That's going to require a reboot to fix that. So I would suggest that we take a short recess to allow staff to get that up and running again. I'm not sure, do we know, 10 minutes? So a 10-minute recess. Someone moved and seconded. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion is carried, so we will be back at 8:03.